Since I can't afford my dream whimsical cottagecore home yet, I've started making tiny pieces of it instead. And apparently my coping mechanism is just turning airdryclay into trinkets. Hey everyone, I'm Shugi, the artist behind novyrajewelry and clayart, and this is my first long form video. In this video, I will be using 1 kg of Fimo airdryclay to create different magnets, pendants, rustic cottagecore paintings, along some other trinkets. So get cozy and enjoy the video. I decided to make my first video about using airdryclay for no particular reason. I just wanted to make some new products for my online store, and I actually went into this whole idea with zero plans, and the entire time I was just kind of trusting the process and hoping for the best. First, I decided to make 4 mini house picture holders. I've actually made a few of these before as prototypes a few months ago, but my family and friends really liked them, so they all got gifted away. So I thought this would be a perfect time to make a few and see if people on the internet also like them and would be interested in buying them. I've only launched my website and small business 2 months ago, so I'm still very new to this and I'm trying to figure things out. And my brand is Novyra and clayart, but I mainly only have jewelry for sale at the moment. So this is why I'm trying to lean more into the clay part of my business as well. So most things that you see in today's video will actually be available for purchase from next week. So if you're interested in that, please stay tuned. And if you want to see my currently available products, you can find the link to my store in the description or in the bio. Anyway, I love making the little mini houses. They feel very therapeutic, and I actually love building miniatures in my free time, like those little mini houses or mini rooms. I usually use the pre-made sets. You should definitely check those out if you never made one, because I don't really have time to make my own, but I saw there are a lot of talented artists who do, and I am very amazed. I want to try making one in the future, but for now I will just make some different buildings from clay. In this video I only made 4 mini houses, but in the future I also want to make lighthouses, or perhaps like a different style building, like a Japanese pagoda, or I could perhaps make some mushrooms or animal picture holders as well. Well, we will see. Also, if you have some airdryclay tips, please leave it in the comments below, because I could really use some. Like for example, how to securely attach 2 pieces, because I saw some people recommending scratching it, which I did, and using slip, which I also tried before, and making like these little worm kind of things to work it together, as you saw me doing it in the video as well. But sometimes the top of the mini houses still come off after drying, which I really don't understand how it happens. So I saw some people recommending using PVA glue before it dries, like that was the weird white thing that I smudged all over it. Like when the top of the mini houses came off before, I just reattached them later and they stayed on very securely after they dried. But I would like to skip this step if possible, so I will see how this PVA glue holds out. I just found it weird using PVA glue on undried airdryclay, but I guess we learn something new every day. Making the cut on the top of the mini houses is probably the most difficult part, so I do mess it up sometimes, unfortunately, because if it's not deep or wide enough, the picture just won't fit in it. But if it's too wide or crooked, the picture will not stand straight and will fall forward and it will look very ugly. So I'm trying to minimize this issue to the best of my abilities, like putting a piece of cardboard into the hole while it's drying in the hopes of it keeping it wide enough. But even then, sometimes, unfortunately, it's not good. And then the mini house will just get demoted to a glorified decoration on the shelf with a hole in it. You might be wondering why I'm wearing gloves, because I personally never really seen anyone working with clay and wearing gloves at the same time, but there probably are some people who do that. Anyway, my hands are just extremely dry at the moment, so I'm trying to avoid overwashing them, and when the clay gets stuck to it, I would have to scrub it really hard. And also this way I don't really leave any fingerprints on the clay, so I don't have to clean that off later. The second thing I made from the airdryclay was a little dragon sculpture for my mom's birthday. This is actually my first ever sculpture, and the first one as well where I used an amateur. So my amateur is far from perfect, but I'm just really trying my best here with all these new things. I decided on making a dragon because both my mom and I love reading, and I know she also likes fantasy books, and I especially love fantasy books. Let it be high fantasy, dark fantasy, romance, or anything in that genre. Sadly, I don't have a lot of time to read these days, but I'm trying to pick it back up. And one of my favorite mythical creatures besides Pegasus is dragons, so I felt it fitting to make a little dragon. I really wasn't sure how to feel about this sculpture because I really hated how the legs turned out, but the clay started drying, so I had to keep working on it. After the legs I made the tails, and I do think the tail helped it a lot, but I still wasn't feeling sure about it. Back on the topic of fantasy books, please leave some recommendations down in the comments. What do you enjoy reading these days? I know I said I don't really have time to read a lot, which is unfortunately true. I'm currently reading the Throne of Glass series, which I'm enjoying a lot, but I also want to expand into different types of fantasy books. And we all know that buying books and reading books are two separate hobbies, and I just really enjoy both of them. To be honest, I can't decide if I enjoyed making this sculpture, but in the end I was somewhat satisfied with how it turned out. I noticed after it dried that one of the horns was so much smaller than the other one, and one of them was hanging a little bit, but I hope my mom will like it anyway. Although I'm satisfied with the tail pattern I made, I cut it in with scissors. I think it gives a cool scale vibe. There is something oddly satisfying about rolling out a slab of clay and then smoothing it out and using a cutter to make the perfect shape every time. I made these little bird clay cutters a while back, but I haven't used them yet, and I thought this was the perfect time to bring them out and make different types of bird pendants. I turned them into finches, pigeons, crows, and parakeets. What is your favorite bird? I especially love pigeons. They are just so cute and they make the funniest nests ever. Besides pigeons, I really like ducks as well, but I haven't really made a cutter for those this time around, unfortunately. Perhaps next time I will. I noticed I rolled out the slab maybe a little too thin, because when I was putting the eye pins in, it was so difficult not to puncture either sides of the bird. So I guess next time I will make it a few millimeters thicker. I also made this little wing cutter, but I didn't think a 3D wing would look good on them, so I just kind of used it as a stem to line out where the wings are. But when I was coloring them later, I realized that indent was very difficult to deal with, so perhaps next time I'll just draw it onto it. After the little bird pendants, I made these rustic picture frames. They don't look very impressive just yet, but they turned out very cute after I colored and decorated them, in my opinion. So of all the things I made in this video, I probably enjoy making the rustic pictures frames the most. That's because I really love cottage and fairycore, and I really want to dress more whimsily in real life as well, so I try to buy more clothes at second-hand and vintage shops, but the stock is unfortunately very limited where I live, and I really don't know where to get pretty and not extremely expensive cottagecore clothes and dresses. I see a lot of brands from America, but importing it isn't very ecological, and also the prices and import taxes are so high, it's really not worth it. Either way, I haven't really given up on looking, but it's just so hard to find what I am looking for. Also, if someday I can afford a house in this economy, I really want it to be a cutesy farmhouse with a smaller garden filled with wildflowers. Or if I have to live in the city, then I would like it to be one of those older apartments that are very historic. Since I can't afford any of those, I shall just make whimsy cottagecore decorations and trinkets to make me feel like I am in a fairy tale or a witch living in the woods. Also, I was thinking that in some of my future long-form videos, I would share my love of history, legends, and myths by bringing some interesting stories and facts and crafting some trinkets or jewelry fitting the story. Would you be interested in it? Either way, I will try to make a few videos like this because I'm obsessed with legends and stories from different cultures. Also, if you have any myths you would like to hear about or want to share, please let me know, because I am very bad at choosing and I'm always interested in new stories to hear. And there are just so many interesting things to talk about. As I am just still starting out, I will make a few different types of videos and just see which I and the audience enjoys the most, and I hope it will help me shape my brand a little bit more as well. I really like how the first picture frame turned out, but it took so long because I attached the outer frame separately and then I had to work it together and somewhat smoothen it out. And it wasn't as rustic as I would have liked it to be, so for the next one I just cut out a circle and wanted to carve out the middle. But I realized that I don't have a carving tool, so I used the dotting tool to make an indent and then kinda scraped out the middle. I wasn't really sure how I felt about it, but in the end I am quite happy with how rustic and yet still quite nice it turned out, and I think after decorating it looks much better than it does now, so just trust me. After the picture frames, I really wanted to make some magnets. I actually made another picture frame later in the video, but I want to move on to the magnets now, so just imagine that it's already done. To be honest, I wanted to make magnets for a while, but I haven't really gotten around to it. But last week in one of the stationery stores, I found some magnets that I could attach to different things, so I thought this was the perfect time to try out making airdryclay magnet. Earlier I 3D printed some cat, bear and fish clay cutters. I only printed some small fish clay cutters, but after the video I made some big ones as well because I kinda like how the big fishes look, but I want them to be like more uniform. I already made some very similar fishes during Christmas for my dad, and I made them into this like garland kind of hanging decoration, and it just looks so happy and cute. It makes me happy every time I look at it, that I wanted to make some magnets that are very similar and give the same feeling. First I was thinking of turning some of these fishes into like keychains or charms as well, but I was unsure if people would be interested in those, so I just made them into magnets because I think everyone could use a little happiness on their fridge as opposed to just in it. I also think these cute, happy, colorful magnets that you will see at the end will be very cool to sell at like different kinds of markets or conventions, but I'm just quite scared to sign up for one because the tables are quite expensive and I don't know if I could make my money back, and it's just so stressful. I will have to look more into it. After the fishes, I decided to make some cat magnets because I really love cats, and I 3D printed this head shape cutter, and I also made a standing cat cutter. I think they would be cool as custom orders where the customer sends the picture of the cat and I will imitate how they look onto the magnets, or I could also turn them into like charms or keychains or maybe even pins if someone is interested in it. Besides the cat, I also made these bear head cutters because I just really like the cute bear head shape. And I know there are a lot of people who like pandas or like just the different types of bears like black bear, polar bear, brown bear. And I thought this would be a cool customizable option as well, or they would just look very cute in general. I made these adorable goose cutters as well, but unfortunately I made them too detailed and the walls of the cutter were also a bit too thin, and it wasn't very compatible with this airdryclay, so I kind of broke it and I suffered with it for like hours. I ended up with only one semi-successful result, so yeah, I kind of gave up on that, but I will remake the cutter because I really love how the cutter itself looks. I think I will turn it into a stamp and cutter combo rather than an imprinting cutter, because for an imprinting cutter it was way too detailed and the eye pin completely broke off. I had the teeny tiniest amount of leftover clay, so I decided to turn it into this very small swerry stone kind of thing. Even if it's not very big or useful and I will not sell it, I just wanted to decorate it because I wanted to avoid wasting it. In the meantime, I started coloring. I use acrylic paint and acrylic markers to decorate my airdryclay pieces. I actually only had the primary colors from acrylic paints, so I mixed almost all of my colors, so I don't think I will ever be able to replicate these, but I really enjoyed the process of experimenting with different color mixtures, and even if I won't exactly get this same color again, I can get very close to it if someone asks for it in a custom order. I just think that's the beauty of making things by hand. In the future, I do want to get more colors. It's just I don't particularly have the space or money to have hundreds of colors of different acrylic paint, and I do also feel like that would be such a waste because there are colors I would probably never even use. Because I do often fall into the issue of me liking a color, for example, a color of clay, and then just buying it and perhaps buying several of it and then ending up not using it at all, or no one else likes it, so it just sits on my shelf and I feel so sad about it. I'm actually making these black cat magnets as a gift to one of my favorite restaurant owners. She's just so nice and makes the tastiest Taiwanese food, and it's just so cozy and I know she will love them. I want to try different types of paints because I already used oil paints, acrylic paints and aquarelle paints before, but I never used gouache paint, and I saw a lot of artists using it to cover like shrink plastic or just air dry clay pieces with it, but I haven't heard a lot of good things about it. I know that it dries into like this interesting matte finish, but it's much less dust and water resistant. I know it shouldn't be an issue once you cover it with a varnish, and it also sounds interesting that you can actually reactivate it water, which you cannot do with normal acrylic paint. But I'm also interested in if you can actually like mix colors into modeling clay, because I know people do it with cold porcelain or polymer clay, but I never seen someone do it with modeling clay. I wonder if it can even be done, or if it would completely just mess up the texture of the clay and it would like never dry or become gooey. Talking of cold porcelain, I do want to try making my own because there's so many tutorials on it on the internet, and the texture and the look of it just looks so good. I'm just kind of lost what glue I should use because there's just so many options and I can't decide. After I let the base color dry, I bring drawing out my acrylic markers I mentioned before, and I use it to put the details onto my charms, magnets and little sculptures. In my opinion, it's so much easier to handle than a tiny brush and paint. I really like my acrylic markers, but the lighter colors have to fight for their life every time I try to draw on something that's not white. I had to layer the acrylic marker like 47 times, but got there in the end. And I was thinking of trying out new acrylic markers. I just don't know which type to get. I saw Uhu making new acrylic markers, and I know of Posca. I own a few colors of it like white, black, gold and silver. And I have these Artex markers. So if you have any recommendations, I would really appreciate them, because I really want to skip going over the same thing several times and risking messing it up. Off topic, I really have to mention that making long form videos is so much more difficult than I thought. Besides the cutting, framing and other stuff, doing the voiceover is so difficult. If I read the script, I sound depressed and monotonous, and if I was like a robot. But if I don't, I just keep repeating the words and saying and keep forgetting what I was about to say. So yeah, this video took way too long to make, so I would really appreciate if you could like it and subscribe. When I was coloring the birds, I made white, black and grey colored ones. I meant the grey colored ones to be the pigeons, because most pigeons are just fully grey with some extra colors on top of it. But then I accidentally started making them into finches, and like 3 in I realized that I used the wrong birds. So now I had to color the white birds into grey birds with acrylic markers. So that was an extra hassle, but I'm still happy with how they turned out, and next time I will make grey birds for both the finches and the pigeons as well, so I don't fall into the same mistake again. I think I'm planning on making like at least 10 different types of birds in general, and if you have any recommendations what those birds should be, I would really appreciate it, because I want to cater to more people and I just really enjoy making this, and I really want to know what type of other birds I could make. Making the cats, especially the head-shaped one, was quite stressful, because if you mess it up they can look quite scary, and I really wanted to avoid that. So I had to experiment on paper like several times what type of eyes I should draw, if the mouth should bend, should I draw whiskers, and just really couldn't decide. So I made all of them slightly different, and then I will decide later which one I like the most. Coloring the goose was actually quite simple because it's white and I already painted it white beforehand. So I just colored the beak and the feet orange, and then I gave it like a little bow on the neck, and that is some little different types of feathers, so it would be more interesting and pleasing to the eye. Back to the mini houses, I was thinking of making these customizable orders as well as also offering some pre-made ones, so people could choose the color of the roof and the house walls themselves. And I would also make the option of being able to choose what type of decoration you want on it. You could choose like little hearts, flowers, vines, or bricks, or perhaps even turning it into little mushroom like I did with this one, but I think it would be perhaps better if I offered the mushroom itself rather than a house turned into a mushroom. And finally I started decorating the rustic picture frames. I first sketched up the idea with a very light colored pencil so I wouldn't mess up the basic shapes, but I still wasn't sure of the whole idea of what I was going to decorate it with. So I just started coloring with acrylic markers, and I actually forgot to film more parts of this because I really just got invested in making it and I completely forgot to turn on the camera. I fell into the same mistake while coloring the dragon. I just kind of forgot about turning on the camera again, so I got this very short clip of it. I'm sorry. This part kind of reminds me of the drawing tutorials where like, oh, draw a circle, second step, draw the owl. By the way, of course I didn't forget to film the small berry stone thing, unarguably the least interesting part of this video. To coat my magnets and pendants, I use UV resin, but I'm still quite a rookie at using it, so it's very messy, and I really don't dare to use it inside. I only use it outside, but even in the shadow the UV is extremely strong, so it's very hard to avoid it getting gooey. So that's the reason why most of my UV resin is not perfectly smooth. I'm still trying to figure things out and I'm getting better at it. I learned that a lot of people are allergic to cured resin, or even can become allergic to it if worn for a prolonged amount of time. So I decided to only coat the front of the pendants with UV resin and the back with polyurethane wood varnish. Also, working with water-based polyurethane can still be dangerous because it contains organic vapor similar to what's in UV resin, but in a much lower amount. And they even coat children's toys with it, since when it fully dries, it is extremely unlikely for someone to become allergic to it. Of course, the chances are never zero. So please always check these details about jewelry before you buy anything online. For the rustic picture frames and the mini houses, I only use polyurethane to coat them, as they are not heavy duty and they don't need a glass-like shine, and the polyurethane still gives them a quite decent water resistance, and they most likely will just only be sitting on a shelf, so that is more than enough. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Have a lovely day. Bye!